Welcome to Artcasters, episode 360. We're talking with Jason Copland today. But before we do that, let's introduce ourselves. So I am Corey Kerr, and you can find my stuff at coreykerr.com. And you should jump on the email newsletter there because I am releasing a new series that I just did the first video of today, sometime. I think yesterday at like 4 in the morning. And it's about intentional creativity. If you'd like to learn how to kind of stoke and intentionally shift over into a creative mindset, we're talking about that. I tested it out on 32 different students and got some really good results. I would say 30 of the 32 had a really good experience with it and really positive results. And so if you want to see that, go over to coreykerr.com, and you can also see t-shirts, mugs, flags, laptop cases, all kinds of things for sale with my artwork on it. So, Scott, where can we find your stuff?
You can find my stuff, my videos you can find on my YouTube channel. It's just search Circworks on YouTube, and there you'll find Making Comics 101. That is my course on how to make comics. It is totally free. It's the most comprehensive free course you're going to find anywhere, and it's on my YouTube channel. Tons of stuff. Whatever you want to learn, you can watch it from video 1 all the way to video like 70 or something like that. Or you can pick and choose if you just want to learn about inking, you want to learn about coloring. But basically, it's everything from coming up with your ideas to printing and publishing and everything in between. Also, at my website at circworks.com, you can find my comic, Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure story. If you just think Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. And you can find my digital products my digital tools that will help you create comics. Like the Comic Maker Toolkit, the Amazing Comic World Builder, Hero Design Studio, and the Comic Lettering Masterclass. All those digital products are available on my website at circworks.com.
Cool.
Josh?
And Josh, where can we find your stuff?
Awesome. You can pick up my graphic novels, Jacob's Apartment, which is a coming-of-age graphic novel about two young adults who are polar opposites who, through crappy circumstances in their lives, kind of find themselves drawn together. And as they are drawn together, their dreams and reality start interweaving. So it's kind of like if you took Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, put it in a blender with Ghost World, and you like that flavor, that is that book. And then 2 stories, my autobiographical graphic novel that talks about faith and mental illness. Both of those are available. And then I'm on YouTube on Joshua Kimball. That's my stuff.
Cool. And our guest today, Jason, I'll let you talk about where they can find your stuff in just a minute. But I came across Jason, I think probably 5 or 6 years ago when you were doing Kill All Monsters. And I think I had you on the show about 5 years ago when you had just finished Pop and you're in the middle of Dread. And then soon after that, you're doing Marvel and Boom and all kinds of different things. And you quit and you started your own book. And it was awesome. And I've thoroughly enjoyed just following you on Twitter and Instagram and just watching the progress of that. But before we get into that, tell us where we can find your stuff and where we can follow you.
JasonCopland.com. There it is right there. It's beautiful. That's pretty much it. I mean, I'm on not all the socials, but the major ones, just at Jason Copland. That's me on Twitter, on Instagram. I'm on Hive and Spoutable and I don't know, because they're just waiting for Twitter to explode, right? Like in a bad way, not in a good way. It's just the wheels are coming off. So I don't know. You just start going to all these places and branding. You got to get your name. I don't want some punk grabbing Jason Copland on Spoutable and trying to like mimic me or something. So although they wouldn't, but what do they have to gain from doing that? But they do
it just to piss you off.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you never know.
Or sell you the URL.
I've had so many artist friends who've had URLs annoyingly held hostage from them by people who just had bought the URL. They aren't using it. And they're like, I'll tell you what, I'll sell that for like $20K. And it's like, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna pay $20,000, but could you just let go of that? Anyhow, sorry. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's good advice, Jason.
Yeah,
If
well,
you
and-
guys are out there, get your name.com and then get that at your name on every social you can.
Yeah, because it, you know, like I said, I like Hive or whatever. I grab it and then I don't really post on it. If it gets popular and things start happening, well, then I've already established that you know, my name and my brand there. So
Nice.
But yeah, I would love to just forget about social media. Like I've been slowly building a newsletter mailing list, and it's there's actually I've got quite a number of people now, so I'm just hoping to like maybe buck this whole social media thing and just stick with sending out newsletters. Although I don't know how to expand, like once, you know, no one would know about it unless they saw it on a social media thing. So I don't know. It's a catch-22, I guess. But yeah, that's sort of me. That's there's my newsletter. Nice, easy URL there. It's just yeah, and then like I say, I'm on those other ones, you know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you wanted to talk about kind of the journey of Full Tilt. I think I was aware of it once you started doing the artwork, but how long were you? Do you want to? I know you said that you didn't want to do this, but I'm going to give you an opportunity. You can totally turn me down. Do you want to tell us like what Full Tilt is?
See, we were talking about how bad I am at figuring out how to sell my stuff. Well, this is it right here in a nutshell. I have no idea how to tell you about this book. It's I can tell you that it's 307 pages.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be oversized. It's going to be a hardcover. It's a black and white book. There's no color inside. And it kind of touches on you know, love, hate, vengeance. It's set in the near future. Well, actually, it's not that near. It's a couple hundred years ahead, and it deals a little bit with not a lot, but ecological issues a little bit. Poverty. It runs the gamut of things. There's a lot of stuff that I'm dealing with in there, but yeah, it's my very first kick at the can for writing for myself. So I'm really excited about it.
Nice.
Yeah, and it looks great.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't know how long ago it was, but at some point you were just doing spreads, and then the spreads kept going, and you said, how long is that one spread that you have? How many pages?
Okay, so yeah, so I decided, because I don't have a publisher, I'm just crowdfunding this. It kind of goes back to what Corey said a little earlier about me kind of just giving up on, or turning my back on publishing in general in comics. Like the deals with Dark Horse and stuff were just, I don't know, left me wanting. And so I just decided that I was going to do my own book, and without a publisher, I could do whatever I want. I can pace it how I want. I can put whatever I want in there. So it started off slow. The 2-pager started off slow. There was when I first started drawing the book, there was like one every maybe like 5 or 6 regular pages. Then there'd be a double-page spread, and then I'd do 5 or 6 regular pages. When I got to about there's a big chase scene at about 180, page 180. It turns into a 24-page continuous spread. So there are 12 2-page spreads, but at the end of one of the 2-page spreads links up with the beginning of the next 2-page spread. So when all of them, they can all be put together, and so it's continuous. It's 24 pages of continuous action. So yeah, and so I'm hoping through the I'm doing through Zoop. I got Zoop guys looking at looking into maybe getting a poster made of that 24 pages. So a
Oh,
continuous.
nice.
Yeah, I don't know if it's doable. It's probably super expensive to do, if it can be done. But or maybe do it in 2 chunks and people can tape it together or whatever. I don't know. But it was sort of a dream where I was just like, that would be fucking awesome. Like just
Yeah.
like, well, so it obviously won't be to scale, because when you put the 24 pages end to end, it's over 19. Oh, there it goes.
Oh,
It's
wow.
over 19 feet long.
Wow.
So so even at 50%, you know, the poster is going to be like almost 10 feet long. So
So rad.
so this is something that, you know, it's something I'm thinking about, but I'd love it to happen. I really would, but I don't know if it's actually feasible.
So Jason, I got a question just in regards to like, sorry, you said 22 pages?
It's 24.
24
yeah.
pages. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've often commented on the show that the weird thing about like writing and drawing your own comics is like in theory, you're like, I can't stand working for clients. I want to draw whatever I want. I want to kind of be able to chase my vision and do whatever I want. And then when you do, you're like sometimes the nightmare client from hell for yourself, doing things like that, where you're like, I've always wondered if I could do a 22-page spread. There's if you had a client being like, and then there's a 22-page spread, you'd be like, really?
Yeah, if a writer did that to you, you'd be like, dude.
Yeah,
come on,
but
man.
it's your own vision. It's like it is so much. It is interesting how those parameters and like how we push ourselves with our own stories. Like it's like you almost expect to push the boundaries a little more. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you find that?
I think so. I really do. And because I'm working on my own pace, I mean, I've been working on this book for way too long. It's coming up to 5 years. But having the time to just to step back if something's not working, not getting railroaded into, you know, like time constraints when working, like when I was doing stuff for IDW, like you've got a deadline, you've got to hit your deadline. And I would hit my deadline, but the work would suffer because I can't just pull back and say, you know what, this isn't really working. I kind of want to come at it at a different angle, or just, you know, maybe move some stuff around. But that might take a day, and then that's a day that I haven't been drawing another page, so I get behind. So, you know, my idea of getting away from the corporate comics and that sort of grind or whatever, it was really just so that I could focus and push myself and try to figure out some new ways, or some, just like the whole idea of a 2-page spread seems foreign for a lot of companies. And so having the freedom to do them whenever I wanted to was fantastic, or is fantastic. I will say though, most of my 2-page spreads aren't like one giant image. There's lots of inset stuff and that sort of thing. There's usually a major image, but then there's other stuff going on. So it's not just, you know, eye candy. There's storytelling in there. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. If you pull it off, you'll have to let me know, like how you did it, because I did a few years ago. I did Inktober, and I had all the drawings connected. Now they were smaller. They were about 5x7 or something like that. But I'd be curious to see if, you know, what's the maximum amount they can print and have it like fold out and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Fingers crossed that it's doable. I honestly, I'm not I'm not holding my breath for it, but
well, it's gotta be doable, because like a large format printer, it has a width that you can't exceed, but the length is just however long the roll goes.
Yeah.
Because what I was thinking as you said this is, it would be cool to do, I don't know if zoetrope is the right term, but it would be cool to do like rollers, and you would just, you know, have it like on a little motor, and it would just constantly, like, I would hang that up. I've got a bunch of art back here. Actually, that one is Jason's. That's Jason's Hellboy. But I've got a bunch of art back here, and I would love to have like a little display that had just like, you know, 18 feet of one page. I think it'd be great.
You have to like custom build a frame that actually like bends the wall.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't
whether
have,
you whether
I
you
gotta-
can print it or not, you have to like actually like film it, like so you have a video of the whole thing panning.
Oh,
across.
yeah. It's definitely something, because like I was saying, I've been talking and doing this book for a really long time. So I've been priming fans for literally years, and that's one of the things that I think is actually going to really work in my favor. It might sound crazy that I've worked on something for that long, but posting stuff online and having people be involved and showing people some of the things, some of my processes and that sort of stuff, like how a page, I'll start in the pencils and then I'll be inking it and I'll take shots of progress of how I'm inking it and that sort of thing. I think that all builds into, I hate don't want to sound pompous, but the excitement that people seem to be feeling about the project. And that's sort of one of the things that's actually got me through all this time is the support of people who seem to be really excited by the book. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I have your Instagram up here.
Oh yeah.
That is a tome,
Yeah.
man. That is a brick of pages.
Yeah, I they're right over there, and they hurt my wrist when I pick them up to like move them around. I do them in chunks because that stuff's heavy, man.
Yeah.
You're talking over 300 pages of good paper and a lot of ink and a lot of whiteout. Oh my god, I got so much whiteout on my pages, it's unbelievable. Yeah,
I'd be curious to know what if have you ever like take your inked pages, weigh them, and then take the same amount of pages uninked, and just to see how much the ink weighs, how much ink is on that thing.
That would be interesting for sure. Yeah.
Now, are you drawing on Bristol?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually had to change the paper. I was working on Strathmore, and like series 400 or something, and then it was fine, and then all of a sudden it started bleeding, lots of bleeding in it when I was inking, and I just got really ticked off by it. So I managed to find it's Canson, and it's like recycled paper, like it's the XL. It's and it's awesome. I love that paper. It's
I like
fantastic.
Canson a little better than Strathmore. I haven't had that issue with Strathmore, but I do like Canson better.
Yeah. Oh, it's just started bleeding like crazy, and I was just like, "You kidding me?" Like I'm already unsure with my inking, and then I got to worry about it bleeding all over the place. I'm like, no way in hell. So yeah, so I did I went to the art store and I grabbed a number of pads, and this was the stuff that seemed to work really well, and thank God, because I really love it. It's great stuff. That's awesome. And it's not super expensive, so yeah.
That's kind of cool to hear, because I had heard about like the kind of coding changing on the 400. I'm a cheapskate and I go with like the 300 series because I can't do that extra at like $10 a pad or whatever.
Yeah.
But plus you're drawing on like 30 by 30.
Yeah, I'm drawing really big. So
oh, nice.
But yeah, I was just doing 20 by 30.
Oh, that's awesome.
I got inspired by like Chris Ware's stuff, and I was like so mystified by how he got all that detail and did his hand lettering, and then I was like, oh, he works like huge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and then everything looks great because you shrink it down. It's just like it looks super tight. Like, wow, how'd you get those lines so straight? Well, well, the line is actually this long. But
exactly.
This long.
It's funny. There's Josh and I. We met in person, and we were both. I had a double page spread, and he had just a single page, and his single page like towered over my double page spread.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. I actually bought a pad of paper. I don't even know how big it is, but it's pretty big, and that's what I was going to do full tilt on, and then I was like, oh, this is too expensive, because my story went from when I originally started, it was about 140 pages. And then as I was working and rewriting and adding stuff and going, oh, wouldn't that be cool if I did this? It's just got bigger and bigger. So I'm just glad that I didn't do it on the big paper, because that would have cost a fortune. That's like way too much money.
Jason, did you like write comics before, or were you primarily an illustrator, or is this like your first writing?
This is pretty much my first writing thing. It was one of those things where it's like, you see some of the stuff. I'm not gonna say what, but you read stuff and you're just like, this is professional. Like they got paid to write this. Like holy fuck! Like I can do that. And then I was like, I could do that.
Yeah.
And so it was like, why aren't I doing that?
Yeah.
And it comes from a lot of frustration of where when a project or a book gets announced, they only talk about the writer.
Yeah.
And it's like,
didn't used to be like that. But
you just get lost. Like the artist gets lost, and it's like, forget about it. Like the amount of work that I'm putting into this, I should be getting equal footing on all of this stuff, and it doesn't seem to work that way. Yeah. So this was a reaction to that too. It was like, you know what? They can't leave my name off it if I write it and draw it. So
yeah. And I think there's something to be said for, like, I came to this conclusion myself with comics and stuff. I only did like one maybe paid graphic novel for somebody, and I was like, after that, just like never gonna touch paid comics again, because I was like, the page rate first off, like I could do a single illustration and make so much more.
Yep.
But also just like like just dealing with a one-off illustration with a client's idea, is one thing. But like if it's a story you're not even into or whatever, or they take a turn that you don't like and you don't have a say in it, it's like, it's so much time investment to make these things. I'm curious anyhow. So for me, like that's one of the reasons I just do like illustration design, and then I do like these weird indie comics where I can do whatever. But I'm kind of curious for you, like, was that one of the main deciding factors in like kind of being like, let's eschew the industry? I mean, you mentioned the name recognition too, like where you want to be able to write it.
Yeah.
I mean, was there like, what's the main drive behind? Is it, I'm just kind of curious about kind of the big drive.
I think that this book actually started with some visuals that kind of were in my head, and I just needed to get out, and then the story was started, and the story, like I said, I've been working on this 5 years. I've actually been probably thinking about it for closer to like 10 years, and it's one of those things where I had these visions of, oh, that would be cool if I drew something like that, or if I drew something like this. And then I kind of accumulated all of those images, and then was like, how can I make a story out of this?
Nice.
And it kind of sounds like my story is going to suck, but it doesn't. But it was one of those just sort of like, oh, these are the things I want to draw. Now let's fit that, let's retrofit that into a story. Like I had a general idea of what I wanted to do, but once I started drawing it, it took off, and I got to tell you, this is the way I did this book was so not what people should do when making a book. Because I started off with an outline, and I started drawing, and then I wrote some actual scenes, like dialogue and stuff. And actually, I will tell you this: almost the entire book was written in dialogue. I didn't write my script wasn't like panel 1, page 1, establishing shots of the city, blah blah blah. Yeah. It was like we're gonna go to this scene. This scene is this, and then these characters are there, and this is what they say. And I just would write what they were talking about, and then if when they finished talking, I would move on to another scene, and I would figure out how those scenes connected and all that sort of stuff. But I definitely didn't write it like anyone should write a story. That's half of one of the 2-page spreads that's in the continuous 24-page thing. Yeah. Wow. I feel like I could just get the pages and just hold them up to the camera so you could see them all.
Yeah, do it, man. This you'll find this audience specifically. Oh, now I'm really big. You'll find this audience specifically really into the process of making art. And so anything you want to show is great.
Well, yeah. Like I say, just trying to pick up the pages off the shelf there will probably hurt my wrists. But
yeah, maybe don't lift them all at the same time. Maybe
Yeah,
stretch
that's true. You might need like like one of those lifting belts, you know?
It's more my wrists, especially my drawing wrist. Like if I strain it, then it's like, oh my God, like how am I going to draw?
Out of curiosity, with like the wrist thing, that's just a side thing, but have you had to get do you have like exercises or anything you do to kind of avoid like the wrist damage that we all kind of the cortisone shots that are just waiting for us in hell before we get
No, I don't have any. I don't have any. No exercises. I'm so bad.
I've got a couple videos that'll help you out.
I feel I'm the same way, and I'm gonna like knock on wood because these two guys are younger than me, and they both have had problems with their wrists. So I'm just hoping that it doesn't.
I'm just thinking that maybe you guys draw more often than I do.
I don't know, judging by that stack of papers. I don't know.
I don't think any of us have hit the 300-page mark on a single book other than you, sir. So well, that's a big book.
Yeah.
For those of you just joining us, Jason's getting that stuff. Jason Copland is with us today, and he has just finished his book Full Tilt, which will be going to Kickstarter soon. And if you want to jump in on that, we've got links in the description of this video that you can get to. We do have a quick question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, we're just talking about thick books. So I did a book. I always go the wrong way. Kill All Monsters with Mike May. Mm-hmm. And it's actually almost like a two-page spread sort of things. But this is 360 pages. Wow. So I actually enjoyed being able to really get my teeth into long stuff. That's one of the things that I don't really like about you get your 4-issue miniseries or whatever. That's like 88 pages, and I don't know, like I don't think you can really tell. Well, some people can, but I've never really been fully satisfied with the amount of story that you can tell in 88 pages. Like that just doesn't seem enough. So that was another one of the things where when I decided to draw for myself was just I wanted the books to be big things. Like I want it to be an object.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, anyway, like almost like we're making books, right?
I know, right?
Yeah.
I know. It's insane.
This is maybe an unpopular opinion on Twitter, but I freaking hate floppies. Like I want big.
Yeah, I stopped buying. Well, I kind of stopped buying comics altogether because I have like no money coming in because I've been doing this for way too long. But I had stopped buying individual issues. It was just, you know what? I like having a spine. I like being able to grab something that has some substance and sitting and getting involved. You read 22 pages and then you put it down, and by the time the next one comes out, you've forgotten what you've read, or there's just no continuity. I mean, you can keep them in piles and like read them when you get 4, but why not just buy the trade? I don't know. But again, that's a personal preference for sure.
Yeah, it's fine. So AD is saying that he's an animator by profession, or she, I don't know gender. But he has an interest. I have an interest in comic book making. I love my story. May you please suggest me how I can transform my story in an attractive script for a comic book?
Well, go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
Oh, I'm just thinking that you've got a story that you want to turn into a comic book script. There's no one way to have a comic book script.
Yeah.
Just write your comic book script how you want your comic book script to be written. Don't worry about it being part or done like so and so does it, like Scott Snyder does it. Like, don't worry how they write it, just write your own comic book script.
I would agree. Whatever works for you. I mean, it's like in TV And in film, there's a very specific format, and that's not the case in comics. And so if you have visuals and what text or what you want going on, you can kind of do it however you want.
Yeah,
Scott,
I know.
did you have a thought on that?
Well, I know, like, yeah, because I tell the people that all the time is there's no standard for comic book script. Like Jason was talking about, he wrote his as just dialogue. I tend to write mine out like, scene one, panel, and do all that stuff. But I don't know if they're both in the Comic Maker Starter Kit, which is the free one. But there's definitely one. But I've got two different script formats. If you want, you can use those. They're like, at least one of them is in the free version on my website at circworks.com. Just download the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's free. And there's at least one script template there, if not two. But, or just Google scripts, whatever you're more comfortable with, really. But I don't know, as far as now, I'm an independent comic guy, so I just write and draw stuff for myself. So, and I think Jason kind of, already answered this question, but I don't know if presenting it to somebody else, if there's anything in particular. But from my understanding is no, that there's no standard comic book script format.
Yeah, I would think that if you are writing it for an artist to draw it, then you need to be fairly specific about what you envision on the page, and then doing what Scott says, page one, scene one, panel one, and blah blah blah. When I'm doing my own thing, it's all shorthand. I don't have to worry about telling myself what I think should go here. I already know it. So I don't write that stuff down. So the way I do my own script is much different than if I had to write a story for another artist to draw.
Yeah. Because there's instructions you don't need.
Yeah.
It's in your head. I think another interesting thing about like script too that I just mentioned it, if you're writing for an artist too, is like make sure that like you're aware of the fact that like most actions have to at least be a panel.
Yeah.
Because often with like younger writers or people who haven't written for comics, that's one of the big shocks is like, oh, I can't have somebody like, even in a conversation, like somebody wipe their nose, scratch their head, do like 10 different things. And you're like, I can't do that all in one panel. Like that, you've just given me 4 pages.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is also another cool thing about like a long form story, like a 300-page story, where if you wanted to have like an extended sequence with where there's like slower pacing, or you want to speed things up, you have like
animation,
you have all the width in the world to kind of like really pace out your story, and that's one of the reasons, tying to what Jason was saying, like I love graphic novels. It's like there's breathing room in it.
Yeah, and you control the pacing, unlike animation where you're just kind of a spectator. But with comics, you can kind of guide the reader as far as how fast or slow that comic is paced.
Yep.
Granda Comics is asking, do you recommend finishing the whole book before crowdfunding, or what do you think about having the book partially done when starting the campaign? What do you think, Jason?
Me personally, I actually have held off crowdfunding this book until it was 100% in the can.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's going to all of the pages are now done, and it's gone to editor for the last pass. He's looking for dialogue and spelling mistakes, and then it's going to the letterer right after that, so that I'm not asking the letterer to make more changes based off something that I've just decided that I want to change or whatever. Once the editor goes through it and it's set, it'll go. So I made it a goal of myself that the book would be 100% finished before I crowdfunded it. So yeah, I think that people can get into real problems when the book is not finished, because they take the money, it goes into their bank account. This is the money that's being used for printing, for shipping, for all that sort of stuff. as soon as that money's in your bank account and you start using it for other things,
Yep.
you're in trouble, because you know, where are you going to get the money back to pay? Like, the reason why you crowdfunded it was because you didn't have money to put your book out. So if you crowdfund and you get the money and you spend it before you put your book out, you've kind of dug yourself a bigger hole than if you just, you know, waited.
Yeah,
So,
or even if you don't spend it and you hold on to it, and then there's rampant inflation and shit.
Yeah,
exactly. Like
Yeah.
right now, right? Oh my God.
Yeah, and so I mean, I'm sure if you had crowdfunded this 5 years ago when you got started, or today, the cost would be drastically different.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I
that-
mean, there was that paper shortage like a year ago or whatever too. Imagine like if you had quoted a book like a year before that, and then suddenly you're hit with like this increased paper cost. Because anyhow.
well, from what my understanding is, the paper's still pretty expensive.
Yeah.
It hasn't really come down. So, yeah.
Lumber came down, but I don't know that paper really adjusted.
Yeah.
And this is a little bit of a house cleaning one. But Jeff Lafferty is the original Artcaster, and Scott Circlin was on there at the beginning as well. So that's the answer to that. Okay, we've got another one here, and then I've got a couple questions for you. Should the whole script be written before drawing, or can you write one chapter of the script at a time, draw that chapter, and then write the next chapter's script?
Me?
Any of us, I guess. I mean,
well, I'll just jump in right away. I actually wrote. I was drawing while I was writing this, and it caused me a lot. Well, not a lot, but it caused me some sleepless nights, because I think that I drew some stuff that I was really happy with, and then I did not include that in the book because the story changed slightly, or a scene, I had to cut a scene because it just wasn't working or whatever. So if you're okay with maybe doing more work than you had to do, then I would say you can draw and write at the same time. If you value your time, unlike myself, you should probably write it all out first, and then kind of get into, or at least write most of it, so you know where it's going, you know how it's going to end, and you've worked out like the major beats and stuff like that. I would say hold off drawing it, but that's not what I did.
Sometimes it's part of the process. Josh will disagree with me here because he's way more organized than I am, but sometimes part of the process is going to be kind of that creative expression, then kind of is a domino that knocks over other ideas and kind of causes some things to happen. But I will say that I just did the exact same thing. I had a great idea for a comic book, and it felt like it was fully formed in my head. And so I drew a crowd scene and then a full page. And then I was like, oh, I don't even know where this is going at all. so that can't happen. But Josh, you like fully script all the way through, right? Before you get started?
No. So like, I actually relate a lot, because my first like graphic novel that I wrote was Jacob's Apartment, which actually is my second graphic novel, but it was published after. It was my second published one, but my first book. And it took me about twice as long as it needed to, for the exact reason Jason was describing, because I had I had the arc of the plot like in my head, and I had all the bullet points where I was like, okay, this is like the rising action. This is what, like, all the beats of the story I had, but that's it. And then I was like kind of freestyling it. And the problem with that, so I was just doing it a page at a time. The problem with that is exactly what Jason was saying, where there were points where I was either wrapping myself in a headache because I had created a thread that wasn't tied like early in the story, because I wasn't fully mapping it out. So like I'd noticed these like loose threads. So it took me like twice as long to kind of craft the story. I drew a lot of stuff that had to be scrapped, and the ending ended up kind of changing from what I designed it in my head, like on the arc, because as I was kind of living through the story, I was like, oh, that doesn't make sense for the characters to like resolve in the way I had it. So it's like, it's kind of fun and it's exciting because you're like, I don't know. I'd be curious to hear, Jason, your take on it, but it's like, for me, it was kind of panic inducing, especially later on where I had to really tie all those threads. I was like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? Because now I have to like figure all this out. And when it started diverging from the path, I was like, oh man, this is like, so I agree with Jason. But I learned the hard way with that, with my first like written graphic novel, where I was just like, okay, that was fun, but next time I'm like writing it out and I'm sending it to an editor at that point, and then I'm gonna, do like 10 edits and have this like perfected script. So I'm like, just boom, like that's part of why I'm rigid, Corey, because of what Jason's describing. So. But I'd be curious, Jason, like, did you have that like as you got kind of deeper in, like you were like, oh man, or I'm curious.
Yeah, so I actually worked on the book, and I got to a point that I was fairly far in, and and I have this is my script, and it's all like loose leaf pages. Oh, I'm going in the wrong way, but it was all dialogue, and it was all kind of done piecemeal, and then I'm like, okay, well, where does the scene fit in with these other scenes? And then I realized that I needed some sort of bridge between the two scenes, and that or what was being said in this was kind of derivative of what was already being said in another scene. So you don't want to keep saying the same things over and over again. So you got to figure out a new way for them to say this information. And it's like, if I just sat down and wrote the story, it would have been a different story for sure, but I would have got it done way faster. And I don't know. I mean, I really like the book that I have. I think it's a fantastic book.
Yeah.
So I have a problem saying that I would do it any other way, but knowing what I know and not knowing if I didn't know the book was going to be good, but knowing what I know in terms of how I got what I was doing, I would never do what I just did. I would sit down and I would write it out.
Yeah.
And I would go from there. I wouldn't do it piecemeal like I did. I had sleepless nights. I really did. And I stopped about 2 years ago, I stopped drawing and I wrote the script. I was like, you know what? I need to just get everything down.
Yeah.
Because there's all this stuff sort of floating, and I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I know what the scene is about, but how does it relate to these other scenes? And I was just like, oh shit, like I need to figure this stuff out. Like, I'm kind of just sitting on quicksand, and I could go down at any moment if
Yeah.
So I actually took about 2 years in, I took a year and I wrote it.
Nice.
And then I came back and it was so much smoother.
Yeah.
But again, it was part of the process. I didn't get to here without doing all that other stuff. And that was just learning my own. Like I said, I have never written anything, at least nothing that isn't like a short story. So it was all a learning experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the thing that's interesting, it's like, even when you're like inking or drawing, it's like you learn things as you do it, and so like at first you might do something that looks just as good, but it takes you like 5 times longer because you don't know the shortcut, and then you learn the shortcut and you're like, oh, okay, that's like just a feather mark or whatever with a brush, and it's like a little way quicker, way easier to do than like the first version that might have looked the same. And so it's like, I feel like it's kind of like that with storytelling too, right? Where you can have that, that kind of, I don't know. It's like, I guess, I don't know, as creatives, it's probably how we learn, right?
And I don't know. I think a lot of the time, I agree with what you're saying, Josh. And I think a lot of the time that those kind of discoveries and the kind of circuitous route that we go through, because I think one of the problems I have with mainstream comics, not ever having worked in mainstream, but as an observer from the outside, is it feels very much like a production, like an assembly line, right? And I like the idea of kind of indie create your own stuff because it's just it's a lot more personable, and it's a lot more of a creative expression. Not that there isn't creativity in that assembly line, there definitely is, because you're dealing with creatives and artists and things, but just by the nature of it being a monthly or it being a whatever, you got to, like we've talked about at the top of the show, you got to make those sacrifices and cut some of those corners and get those things in. Whereas I like a little bit of that, and I've done way more animated shorts than I have comics, but in that process, I like a little bit of that discovery, a little bit of those kind of dead ends, that you can kind of go down. I think there's a lot of real good value in that. And I think that's the type of thing that's gonna kind of like keep the humanity in the indie stuff. Is, yeah, there's probably more efficient and more effective ways to do it, but photographic comics are boring. Like drawing everything by hand is definitely not the most time-saving way of doing things, but it sure does have a whole lot more heart and soul, even with all its warts and bumps and bruises along the way. Yeah. So, quick question here. We've got enjoying listening to this. Are there some female comic writers you'd recommend checking out? Let's just, because I want to keep on topic. Let's all just say one. I'm gonna jump in and say I don't know that many writers, because I follow more artists than I do writers.
Yeah.
But I will say, because this counts, Joelle Jones has written and drawn one of my favorite comics, and so she's probably mine.
Yeah, it depends on what you want to define as comic, like what genre or whatever. But I mean,
Right.
One of probably the best-selling female writers and artists is Raina Telgemeier. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
And if you want like adult stuff too, Alison Bechdel is probably one of the best female writers in comics too. Writer artists. But yeah, Raina, like if you want to learn how to do comics all ages and make a crap load of money as a cartoonist, check out Raina Telgemeier, because she is killing it. Like she is living the dream of.
I forget her name, but who's the artist writer who's doing Lore Olympus? Because she's killing it too.
Yeah. I don't remember, but yeah, that's huge. Like
I'm bad at remembering writers' names. Sorry, writers. I can't buy your original pages and put them up on my wall because I just don't care about the script as much.
Becky Cloonan too. You guys should check out Becky.
Oh yeah, she's great. Okay, so sorry, go ahead.
I just want to shout out to Canadian writer Kate Beaton. I like Kate
Beaton.
Hell yeah.
What does she do?
Heart of Vagrant, right?
Yeah, Heart of Vagrant. She just did a new one. I'm totally gonna blank on it. It has to do with the oil sands in I think it's just called Sands, in Alberta. So it's like a autobiography of her time. She actually worked in the oil sands in Alberta. So
cool.
That's awesome.
It's quite good. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, so you're now at the tail end of this huge experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you hit the pinnacle of what a lot of people would say is their dream. You broke in, you worked for major publishers, you got out, now you're doing your own thing. If you could travel back in time to where you quit mainstream publishing and started your own thing, and give yourself a couple pieces of advice, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I don't know.
Buckle up.
Yeah, I think that I knew on some level that it would be lonely, but I didn't actually understand until I was about 2.5 years into this thing, where I'm like, I don't talk to anybody. I don't have an editor that I bounce stuff off of. I don't have a writer that I chat about how to lay this out. It's a lonely experience. Whereas, although working for these other companies, there wasn't a lot of back and forth either. But you still felt like you were part of something, like a team-ish sort of feeling. But when you're doing your own thing, you're you're on a boat in the middle of the ocean and you're hoping that you spot somebody or some land or something, because holy crap, it's lonely out there. Yeah, so I'm looking, because I've worked on this for so long, I'm really looking for, I'm getting Michael May and I are going to do some more Kill Monsters, so so now I have somebody to talk to for a while.
Nice.
And so while we're doing that, I'll work on a new story, but I'm going to write it before I delve into it. But yeah, so I don't know. I probably just tell myself that you're gonna be lonely, and maybe get a cat or a dog or something.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I remember you mentioning a couple times that you felt the kind of disconnect, from the community. I mean, you had, working professional inside of comics after having broken in, and then when you started striking out under your own, I remember you mentioning a couple of times on Twitter that you're like, oh man, nobody's really reaching out. It's I don't bump into people at shows.
Yeah, well, because I stopped doing shows, even pre-COVID, but being Canadian, going down to the United States is very difficult to do shows. People at the border do not like it when Canadians come down with a boatload of stuff to sell. They're not happy about it at all. So it was always really awkward going to the States to do shows. So I kind of was pulling back on that, and then the COVID happened, and of course everything shut down. And it made my life those decisions much easier, that I didn't have to feel guilty that I didn't go to, Emerald City or C2E2 or whatever. But not going to those shows made me even more isolated, because, going to the show, you would at least walk down Artist Alley and you would say, oh, geez, hey dude, I haven't seen you in a year or whatever, and you stand there and you chat, but you don't get that same sort of connection online, like through Twitter or whatever. That was a funny joke that you did, or I really like that drawing, but there's no real back and forth, if you're standing at someone's table and chatting with them. So yeah, so with me leaving and then me not doing shows, the isolation part of it it's pretty big for me.
Yeah, I might recommend something like this, because I'm in a really isolated area. Just in general, there's not a lot of humans around where I live, and even fewer artists and creatives. It's a very rural area. But I'm in Idaho, Scott's in Arizona, Josh is in California, and yet I probably talk to these guys, more than I talk to, people that I'm not working with, but that I live in the same town with. And that has actually helped me quite a bit, is because, I'll just sit here in my studio by myself, and I feel like living the creative life a little bit is also puts you in a little bit more of a vulnerable state of mind. You're kind of going against the grain of society. You don't really fit in, kind of by design. Like, I don't want to fit in, because I don't want to produce the same type of things that everybody is seeing and making, and those types of things. And so it has been really helpful for me over the past few years to be able to get on and live stream and talk to these guys. And, because I agree, text-based communication is just not, it's interesting, but it doesn't really cut it from like a human level.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say also, I think, Jason, that's actually not a bad thing to let cartoonists know, because if you're endeavoring to do your own comic and write and draw it, one of the most encouraging things I ever heard was, when I was first starting to do indie comics, I saw Chris Ware do a lecture where he was basically, somebody had asked him, what do you, what's your advice for people who want to do indie comics? And he was like, don't. And then he was basically just explained, you're going to hate the whole process. And then he explained that he had met Jeffrey Brown, thinking he loved his work. And he was like, this guy must just have so much fun doing his comics, because it's really loose. And Jeffrey Brown was just like, I hate this process, and I don't know if there's something wrong with me. And he's like, look, I'm going to tell you that. And if you want to do comics, you're going to do it anyway. And he's like, I just wanted to say that, because he's like, there's so many cartoonists who are like doing it, and you get into it and you're like, this sucks. And and you're like, why does this suck? Like, who's doing this where it doesn't suck? And it's like, no, the process kind of sucks. We just all do it. And
Yeah.
I think that especially when it's your own written and drawn stuff, like that's a good point. Like, because you can't really, I mean, yeah, doing live streams and stuff like that help, because you can draw while you talk and hang out, kind of like bullpen style, which I love. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of you and a page, you know.
Yeah.
And that is pretty lonely.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been asked a number of times over the last little while, what got me into comics. Like, it was sort of a general sort of thing thrown out by lots of people, like, why comics? And, you know, I've thought about it for years, and I have no answer for that. Absolutely zero answer. I have no idea why I draw comic books. I honestly don't. They're a pain in the ass. They're horrible. They're disposable, and you spend like days on a page, and it takes somebody 15 seconds to flip the page, and they never look back again. And you're like, I don't understand. Why do I do this? And I honestly don't have an answer. And it's bizarre, but I get up every morning and I do it.
Yep.
I don't know.
And then here's the thing that's sick about cartoonists, including myself. It's like, we also try to push it on other people. We're like, I have friends who are like happy graphic designers, and I'm like, have you thought about doing your own comic? And they're like, are you kidding me? I'm like, come on, it's great, guy. I'm like the drug pusher on the street, you know.
That's a very normal human thing, though, if you think about parents. Like, it's like, oh yeah, it's gonna be great. You deal with somebody else's poop and you don't sleep for years on end, and they just scream at you and they hate you about 10 years later.
Point.
It's wonderful. You should really do it. It's the best experience.
Yeah. It is the hardest work you'll ever do, but you should totally join us.
Well, or even just on a simple thing, if you taste something disgusting or smell something really gross, you want to like share it. You like smell it, like, or whatever it is. I don't know what that is about people.
Oh, this milk is spoiled. Here, try it.
What's your favorite part of the process? I mean, if you go from like writing, roughs, thumbs, pencils, all the way through to inking, lettering.
Yeah, inking for me is the best part.
Yeah.
But it is the most it's not scary. It's the most frustrating part, I think, is that you can lay down a line in so many different ways, and you got to figure out the best tool and the best pressure and the best and is this line really saying what I want it to say? Which is one reason why I use so much whiteout. Like, honestly, I use a lot of whiteout, because what I do is I tend to draw semi-fast with a number of lines, and then I white out the lines I don't want anymore. And people sometimes are like, how did you get, like, they'll be like, I don't understand how you get your line quality. It's like, well, it's messy. Like, I've got pages that like the topographical maps, like they're mountains and valleys. Like, there's so much whiteout on it. Like, there's seriously, there on one page in one of the probably the top fourth, not one piece of paper is visible. It's just whiteout, and it's not just whiteout once. I'd white everything out. I'll draw it, and then I'll white it all out again, and there'll be like layers. So it'll be like if an archaeologist, started, or like these people that look at old Renaissance paintings and stuff, and they get out their special radar whatevers, and they can look through the different levels, and they can see. My drawings are like that. There's probably, on some of these pages, there's probably like 25 drawings that I've covered and then drawn again. And the reason why some of my line quality is just so unique is because it's impossible to draw on whiteout. Once it's all gloppy and chunky, and you try to draw on that,
Because I was going to ask.
Get, you know?
I was going to ask what kind of, when you say whiteout, but what do you actually use? Because I've always had that problem with one, coverage is difficult.
Yeah,
and two, going over it.
I use the Pentel correction pen.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
Hell yeah.
And I go through these like I buy them in bulk.
Yeah.
They're I have Pro White, like the stuff in the jar, and you have to add a little water because if it and I just find that when I put it over it the lines show through again, and I just need something that gives me like opaque white so that I don't see what I drew before and I just kind of go for it again, that sort of thing. But yeah, of the process, inking is where the magic happens for me.
Yeah. Well, you have beautiful ink lines, so that makes a lot of sense. And I do like that it's funny because I wouldn't have envisioned a lot of whiteout because it's such a it seems like a very immediate kind of thick to thin, very subtle, like but like bold line work. It just looks very confident and quick, and it's and not in like a bad way. So it's kind of interesting to think there's a lot of white out there.
Well, I think that whiteout for me is the great equalizer. It's one of those things where if I do draw fast. Well, I draw semi-fast, but it's quite immediate. And the thing is that I know that because I have whiteout, if the line sucks, I just white it out and draw it again.
Yeah.
So it's a liberating thing to know that, because I look at these pages, my God, I'll go to like when I used to do shows anyways, I'd go into Artist Alley and I'd see these originals and the pristine lines and not an ounce of whiteout. And you're just like you watch, what's his name? Mark Morales. He does his inking videos and stuff. And I'm just like, holy shit. Like he every line is boom, boom, is beautiful. And I can't do that. Like I need to just know that well, he obviously doesn't feel the pressure either, but it's one of those things where I think that if I wanted to make the perfect line each time, that I would end up making the worst lines because I would be overthinking it all the way through. So for me, I know that if I make a bad line, I'll just white it out and I'll draw it again. So yeah, it's part of the process for me. Do you
have to do a lot of like deep thinking when you're inking, or does it feel more intuitive, the inking stage, than like the drawing stage?
Inking is pretty intuitive. Yeah. And again, that's because whiteout, if I put a line down, if I take a chance and draw something and if it doesn't work, I can just white it out. So I don't have to worry about making the perfect line. I just have to make the line that works. So,
and for those of you watching, if you want to see Jason kind of rough something out and do the pencils on things, that's what we did in the previous interview that I had. And so you can just get on YouTube and search for that.
I can only imagine how good.
Do you remember that?
No.
You did
I have such a problem with people watching me draw. I'm surprised that I let you film that because, that's one reason why I stopped going to show and doing shows tabling. It was that people would be like, "Oh, you do commissions," and I'd be like, "Well, I better because that's why I'm here, I guess." and then they'd stand and they'd try to watch me draw, and oh my God, no. I need to be in a secluded room with my beverage and some music playing and solitude. Like the whole idea of drawing in front of people is it freaks the crap out of me. So, I'm surprised I did that.
You did, and it was awesome. I watched a few minutes of it this morning again. And
all right, well.
So it was really interesting because you're doing Judge Dredd at the time, and you're laying out a couple panels there, and
okay, yeah.
So it was good stuff. It was nice.
Awesome.
I mean, yeah, it was good. So let's assume the Kickstarter is wildly successful, and
also just Corey, because it's something I wanted to get into because you're doing it on. You said Zoop, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I keep saying Kickstarter.
Well, it's kind of like
He's-
Kleenex, or
Right.
Yeah.
or-
Yeah, and I debated how to go because Zoop, well, one of the strong thing for Zoop for me is that they take care of, they're going to find the printer, they're going to deal with the printer, it's going to get shipped to them, they're going to fulfill it. Especially being Canadian, the idea of shipping stuff across the border or sending it to a third party fulfillment thing, and I like I just like so Zoop was one of those sort of things where it's like, well, you know what, they kind of take care of a lot of the things that that I just don't have the head for. Yeah, so Zoop was was at the top of the list. My wife actually pushed me, and I even told these guys. My wife pushed me. It was sort of like Kickstarter, Zoop. I don't know. And then she's just like, you need to go with Zoop because you will be the worst person to live with when you're trying to do all this other stuff. And I'm like, you know what? You are 100% correct.
Yeah.
I'd be the worst person to handle any of that stuff. So.
And
yeah, so Zoop.
correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but it's because what little I know about Zoop is somebody who has some, I think it works best for somebody who has a little bit of a reputation, and for you, somebody like you who's worked in like with the bigger publishers and stuff and have made a name for yourself. They actually push it and do some of the promotion, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's in their best interest anyways, because
right.
they make a percentage off whatever the final goal is. So
right.
So for them it would make sense to push.
So does Kickstarter, but Zoop, they have less creators, and aren't they?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
A little bit.
Well, I think Zoop stuff is their success rate's higher than Kickstarter.
Nice.
But the amounts that they're asking for, they tend to be much smaller campaign goals. So not to take anything away from that, it's just I think instead of you go on Kickstarter and lots of people looking for like $25,000, you don't see a lot of that on Zoop. You're looking at like $4,000 to $5,000 sort of stuff. So so I think it's easier to get that stuff over the goal line than to ask for, to shoot for the moon. On that note, I'm looking for big money, man, big money. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're so. Do you know when you're going live with that campaign?
Not specifically. We may.
Okay.
Yeah, because it kind of boils down to me going back to what I said before, is I want to make sure that it's full, like the book is done. So Troy Peteri's going to letter my book. He does lots of lettering for DC. He does like all the Batman books and stuff. And so he's giving me a timeline, and then I've kind of added a little wiggle room just to make sure that he's not, he's not up against anything. So yeah, so because of the wiggle room, I don't want to set a specific date in case things, go a little longer than he anticipates. So I don't have an exact date, but I would imagine early mid May. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good. And the best way to know about that is going to be getting on Jason's newsletter. And so there. You've got the link on the screen, but also you can go down into the description of this video and do that. So, well, cool. Well, we're a little over an hour. I'm happy to keep going, but anything that you want to cover, anything that you wish we would ask you?
No. Luckily, you didn't ask me what my book was about, so that's good. Yeah, no, I feel good. I mean, it's only 10 o'clock here, so I can keep talking, but
yeah.
That's totally up to you guys.
Well, let's talk tools a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
We got a lot of process junkies here.
I love talking process. I can talk process all day long.
Are you mainly brush? And if so,
No.
So what are you using?
I use a Hunt.
Well,
now I'm blanking on it. I use so yeah, it's a Series C5. It's actually a lettering. Let's see if I can find one. It's actually a lettering nib.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question.
So it's one of those flat ones, but
how did you get used to the nib without it spitting too much? Because like I've always had that problem with nibs. Whereas brush, I don't have that issue.
Well, these ones here, man, they take abuse, and that sort of immediacy and stuff that you were talking about. I can put a lot of pressure on, or I can. So if I go straight, it's a fatter line, and if I go sideways, it's a thinner line. So I can actually get a good variety of line from from this nib. I don't really use. You might be talking like crow quills. Sort of, that stuff can splatter on me too. Yeah. But I find that even the splatter is part of the process. I don't really.
Yeah, it's not that big cool. Yeah.
But I stopped using brushes because brushes they erode my confidence, because I always try to get them in a point. It seems I don't know, they would seem to lose points for me. I'd be all right for a little while, and then all of a sudden the brush will just fatten out of nowhere, and just be like So, and they're way more expensive.
I switched over to Kiritake. I've got a red barrel and then a 55, but a couple of those brush pens. Because what I was finding is when I was using nibs, I have a tendency to. I'm the guy that zooms into 16,000% on Photoshop or whatever, and I do the same thing. Josh is always making fun of me. He's like, "Quit putting dimes next to what you just drew. Just draw bigger and faster." But and so with a nib, for me, it has so much precision that I end up noodling to the point of just wasting time, because no one is going to look at this 16th of an inch where I put 27 different lines or something. So the brush kind of forces, I can still get a thinner line, but the brush forces me to be a little bit more fluid. That's kind of why I switched to the brush, was to kind of get away from my toxic perfectionism in the line work a little bit.
So Jason, when did you start using nibs, out of curiosity? Did you when you were first inking, you were kind of using a brush and then switched to nib?
Yeah. Well, when I was before comics, so in high school and stuff, I drew with nibs all the time. That's kind of just what I drew with. Actually, the first thing that I ever drew with, as an artist at age, I don't know, 9 or something, was my calligraphy pen. I got a calligraphy set for Christmas.
Awesome.
And I'm like, my handwriting is the worst, just the worst. And I'm trying to do these fancy M's and stuff. And I'm like, this is stupid. But I started drawing, I'm like, I tried to draw Spider-Man, or I can't remember what. And I was drawing it, and I'm like, I can get cool lines if I do like this. And I can go whip, whip, whip. And I didn't know anything about nibs and stuff. So it was a fountain pen that I started drawing with. And then, in grade 11 or 12 or whatever, art class, the art teacher was like, we're going to draw with nibs today. And I'm just like, what's that? And, it's just an extension of what I was already doing. I just didn't know what they were.
That's awesome.
And, so that's always been my natural default. Brushes, I felt like I had to, because everyone, used the Winsor Newton 7,
the Series 7
size 2.
You drop $80, and then when your tine splits, you're out $180 or $100.
Yeah, and it was just I'm doing what what they said in Wizard or whatever. These are the tools that you use.
Yeah,
and I just found that a brush it eroded my confidence. I couldn't draw as fast. I couldn't draw with as much just confidence. It was every time I put a line down, I'm like, is this going to be the line I want? Whereas a nib is pretty consistent.
Nice.
Yeah. And these ones, the C series, I put a lot of pressure on these things. When I draw, it's if when you draw in pencil or whatever, I'm the guy that's always snapping the lead, because I'm just engraving.
You're heavy. Yeah.
I'm just engraving. And these can handle my heavy-handedness for sure. So
that's kind of cool to hear, because I've always been a little, like, my wife's an illustrator too, and she's very light with her drawings. Like, she's able to just make marks, and whereas like when I'm doing it, it's very like dark and scribbly, and so that's kind of interesting. I'm gonna have to try. You're not the first person we've had on here who's like almost like sold me on nibs, because that sounds awesome. I need to revisit that. I think I just gave up too early with nibs.
Yeah. The only problem is that you got to find the one that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone through a number of different types, finer ones, ones that are a little bit thicker, that sort of thing. But I just kind of settled on this one, and I haven't really gone off it for a couple of years now. So, well, actually, it's been over a couple. I was doing the dread stuff with it. Yeah, awesome. So that's like 7 years ago. I don't know. Yeah. Do
you have a preferred ink?
Whatever's cheapest. I use that Speedball Black. I've got like 25 things with a little bit left, because it's like super chunky and clunky, and I don't know if it's any good, but it's just sort of, I can get it in bulk. Essentially, I can just buy tons of it, and I don't have to worry about, because people like the deleter, or somebody a fan of mine sent me a deleter. Someone sent me a deleter, and it's nice ink, but it's like this little jar.
Yeah, it doesn't go very far,
and it's like and I'm like I'm meeking out my lines, and I'm like, oh, I've only got like 25 lines left. This it's like massive, like seriously, like, and that's not even I've got a bigger one. I've got this one. You know what I mean? Like, So, but that's the ink I use, but that's mostly just because it's cheap, and I mean, Speedball, it's a name. So I had some Chinese ink. I don't know what brand, but it was always too watery. So
yeah, that's cool. Do you like do anything special to it, like leave it out overnight or water it down, or
the ink?
Yeah, your Speedball.
So I actually have I have like a little jar that I put it in, and then once it gets to consistency that I like I'll leave it open if it's a little too watery. But once it hits sort of a consistency that I think is good, I actually put a plastic bag over it with an elastic, and that just keeps it it keeps it from evaporating. And then as it gets lower, then I got to put more stuff in. It's a balancing act. It changes. I try to shake up my bottle and make sure that I get all the carbon that's settled. I try to make sure it gets all mixed in there, but I don't know. I don't know how much, because you can't see in, so I don't know how much of the carbon is actually still stuck in a cake at the bottom, and how much is just water. So I don't know.
What about? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm done.
I was just gonna say, what about pencils? Do you use like a blue line, or do you use like lead, or?
So I do. Graphite? I use HB. Just like a mechanical. The 2 millimeter one, not the really thin one. But
I was gonna say, if you got a heavy hand, you'd be snapping.
Oh no, but I actually don't do a lot of penciling. So I do all my roughs on my Cintiq.
Cool.
I do, and then that way I can resize, and I can move stuff around, and I can flip.
Do you print it in like a blue line then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. So
that's how.
So I've got an oversized printer, and I just print out on my boards. I just turn it blue, and so
cool.
So it's that once I made that leap, once I didn't pencil on a page and then have to ink that pencil like that again, that's another thing that eroded my confidence. Was like, so I just made this beautiful penciled panel of Thor holding like whatever, and I'm just like, and I make that one line and I fuck it up, and it's like, no, like what have I done? And you white it out, and you can't get that line back where the pencil was. So as soon as I was like, oh, if I do my roughs in in the computer, and I can print them out. And if I fuck it up, I can just print it
reprint.
again.
Yeah.
And the thing is, once I knew I could do that, I almost never ever needed to reprint them. Like it was like this weird mental, like somebody had just taken a rock off my brain and said, now you don't have to worry about that. Like that's something that you don't have to think about because you've got it all there safe and you can print it out again. And I just, okay. And so it's just like the whiteout. It's like this liberating thing. I've just taken away all the things that gave me stress when I was drawing and just try to make it as stress free as possible or stress less.
I love that you mentioned that because like it's funny. I use brush pen like Corey. I just use the Pentel Pocket brush pen, like the cheapo one.
It's a great one.
And I'll just buy the cartridges in like bulk because they're super cheap. And if I do have that problem with brushes where I like using the thick brushes because I like being able to go super thick and then I can kind of pull back and get a real thin line. But anytime I have a Series 7, anytime I use it, I just worry that I'm going to be out $80. And so I'm just like, it's like the precious materials thing I'm not good with, where it's like there's something about just like the cheap immediacy of just like being able to like, oh, it's out, just toss it. Yep. It's like microns too. I used to use microns a lot and they were such a pain in the butt and they'd clog. And now it's like if I need mechanical line, I'll just use like Pigma liners and throw them away because it's like it's $1. I don't care.
I remember back in the days using rapidograph and that. No.
I just use the cartridge based brush pens because my focus is so fragile that even just dipping, I get distracted and I start thinking of like, do I have enough ink or too much ink or like I fixate on the weirdest stuff. And so if it's just like there's ink in the thing and I'm just going to keep going. But as soon as I'm using like a traditional brush or nib, I find myself like I go, and then as soon as I need to dip again, it's like I've broken my concentration, and I don't know, it's weird. Or I find with nibs that I have like a death grip, like I am like with a brush, it like necessitates like a lighter touch, and so it's so much easier on my wrist and my arm and my neck. Whereas on a nib, I'm like, whereas in a brush, I can, be a little bit more fluid or whatever. The one thing I have to be careful of is not resting my entire arm on my pinky as I use the brush. But yeah, the nib and an actual brush rather than a brush pen. My concentration's so fragile. I get so distracted so easily that the dipping is just like an interruption. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I actually have I have ink all over my walls because I dip and then I flick.
Yeah.
I dip and flick. And I try to flick it on the paper. I've got like paper taped on my drawing board. But if I miss, it just goes all over the place. So my studio is like when we get hauled off to the old people's homes, they're just gonna have to like cut all the plywood, all the drywall off because they're never going to be able to paint on that because it's all lumpy with like ink. But,
I love the idea of this. It's like a fossil record that people are having to kind of like carbon date, but they're carbon dating by the carbon in your ink. Like it's like and the whiteout layers. That's awesome. Yeah, I love test sheets though. Like it's funny. I've had moments where I've almost thought it would be cool to just see a published book of every cartoonist, just like little test sheet that you have, like because generally I'll overwork the test sheet more than I need to because I don't want to have to like retape another one to the table. Yeah. And so it ends up looking like some just weird, bizarre abstraction, but it would be fun to see a collection of those.
There you go.
Awesome? Yeah.
I've got, and because I use a lot of whiteout, there's like whiteout, I'll scribble whiteout lines and stuff. But I've probably got about 100 on the floor here.
So you save them.
Yeah. Eventually, well, I was thinking of of doing like an art gallery show.
Yeah.
It's like my abstract expressionistic self coming through. Like, what does this mean? Well, I was thinking about pandas when I did this one. But yeah. But yeah, I've got tons of them, and I always think some of them are fantastic. Like they look so cool. But yeah, I don't never know what to do with them, so they just pile up.
Just save them for Josh's book.
Save them for what? Sorry.
Save them for Josh's book.
Oh, there you go.
I just think it would be interesting to see a bunch of different artist test sheets, because they always look different too. Like I do a lot of like hatching with my brushes, and so it's like a lot of little fine lines and then fine to thick. I have like Kevin Cross, a friend of ours. He has like a real like Jeff Smith kind of style to his line. So it's like his test sheets are a lot of those like slow, steady, one hand without any wiggle line that I always envy. It's just interesting. I don't know. It's just fascinating seeing different test sheets. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing yours. That's
cool. Well, I'm always happy that somebody actually appreciates those, because honestly, I do look at them and I think these actually look pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with them though, so I just, like I said, I just pile them there. I threw a bunch out a couple years ago. I threw a bunch out because. What am I going to do with them?
You got to sign them and ship them out with people who back your Zoop.
Oh my gosh! Yeah,
test sheets, guys. Test sheets.
Yeah,
but they are cool. Like every once in a while, they are very surprising. I agree. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. It taps in. Like I say, if I was a painter, I'd be an abstract expressionist. That's the stuff that speaks to me. It's the big actiony mark making stuff. It's it fits in with my comic making style.
I love it.
Yeah. So
Sergio is saying you could scan them and use them as Photoshop textures.
You certainly
could. You could probably scan those and sell them as like a digital pack.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna scan them and write my story over top of them. I've already got my next book finished. It's just in a pile of sheets down on the floor. My story is just going to be very dark and talk about the void a lot.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Pre-creation.
That's
be
right.
It is. It's unorganized matter. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's good. Well, good. Well, I appreciate you coming on. We're at about an hour and a half, so we'll cut it. But listen, when you get closer to going live or while you're live, come back and we'll have you on and we'll do a big.
That'd be fantastic. This has been a lot of fun, guys.
Yeah. Anytime. I try not to bug people too much, but anytime you're like, hey, I'd like to say some stuff, or you got a topic in mind, just reach out. We'll have you on again. That'd be fun.
Perfect.
So yeah. If you wanna find Jason's stuff, then I gotta find the thing. Where's the link? There we go. Go to his website, which is hisname.com, jasoncopland.com. And in the description of this video, you can join his newsletter by going to that link there that's on the screen. And if you join that newsletter, he promises that he will email you at least when the crowdfunding on Zoop is going to go live for Full Tilt. And so jump on there. Anything else you want to plug or say?
Not really. Just with the newsletter, I'm going to announce there's going to be it's going to be an early bird thing for people that are part of my newsletter. So because there'll be stuff I'll be selling, pages will be available, and I think there's going to be a few other things. And so it'll be sort of like, first come, first serve and early bird type stuff. So the people that are on my newsletter will get the link, will know about it before anyone else will. So that it's incentive to join. Yeah.
Well worth it for sure. And Josh, where can we find your stuff?
You can find my stuff, Jacob's Apartment and Two Stories, my 2 graphic novels, in bookstores and online. I want to really reiterate, support this from Jason, because the mainstream stuff Jason's done is awesome, but fans of comics and artistic expression need to support when somebody like Jason is writing and creating his own vision. Yep. That needs to sell as big as Judge Dredd, right? Because there's no Judge Dredd without the initial guy who made Judge Dredd, and there's no Jason Copland stories that are self-written and illustrated if they can't move. So support that, because we want more of that. I want more author artist stuff, because that's the best stuff. So
Yeah,
get out there and support that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I agree. I'll plug in my newsletter. So if you're on my newsletter, I'll give you a little heads up as well, probably after Jason's newsletter. So make sure you're on his. But yeah, backing indie stuff is important. And I just got a new design that I just released, and so if you want to check that one out, that's at coreykerr.com. And if you get on that email newsletter, then you'll see those as they come out, as well as the video essays of me describing my weird thoughts behind the scenes of why I'm drawing what I'm drawing. And Scott, where can we find your stuff, and how should we keep up with this show that jumps around from channel to channel?
Yeah, so you can find my stuff on my YouTube channel. Go to Circworks on YouTube. You'll find Making Comics 101. It's the most comprehensive course for drawing comics that you'll find for free. And like I said, it's at Circworks on YouTube. Also, my website, circworks.com, where I have digital products tools and things that'll help you, templates, all that kind of stuff for making comics, as well as my comic, Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure story. Just think Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. And as Corey was alluding to, we do this show every single week. Normally it's on Thursday. Today it's on a Wednesday. Who knows what day it'll be on next week. Also, the tricky thing is it bounces back and forth from Corey's channel to my channel to Josh's channel and all this kind of stuff. We have different guests. So there's a lot of stuff to remember, but if you want to make it super easy, just join our mailing list. We don't spam you or anything. We just usually about 30 minutes or so before we go live, we send you a link to the show. We'll tell you whose channel it's going to be on. We'll tell you who the guest is going to be, what the topic, all that stuff. That's the easiest way to do that, because YouTube doesn't always inform people. So join that mailing list. There's a link in the description here. So, and also I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone in the chat and thank you for all the great questions and conversation going on in there.
Yeah, that's great. All right, guys, we will see you all next week. Hang tight for a minute, Jason. All right. Thanks for jumping on.
All right, thanks.
Bye, guys.